Hi guys, how are you? Welcome to Carrierist Lesson 3. Let's just wait for probably another minute before everyone can join. I am seeing 23 participants now. How are you guys? How's your Wednesday night? Blues. Hi P, Rena. Hi Shayla. Hi Hira. Aziz John. That's nice to know. Oh, that's nice, Fiona. Mine's fine. Okay, I think we're at 23 participants still. Let's just wait for others to join. Probably I'll just start then. They could just rewatch the recording. Okay. Hi everyone again. My name is Hezron. I think this is the first time I'll be teaching this class. So again, my name is Hezron. You can call me Hez. You can call me Ron. You can call me Hezron. It's totally up to you. So I am a manual QA instructor with Careerist. And just to give you a background about myself, I'm a QA professional for the last 12 years. I work as a QA lead currently. So I manage the QA team, complete testing activities, create test plan, test strategy, manage testing deliverables, and work with the business and the stakeholders for all testing activities, planning and results. So my recent project was with Google in Mountain View, and I've also worked with AT&T in Seattle in New Jersey, and I've also worked with Bank of America in Lower Manhattan. So that's about myself. For today, we're going to learn lesson 3. And if you have any questions, just feel free to chat to let me know. Just type into the chat box, and I'll happily to answer your questions. So I hope I'll be able to provide more information about this course and share my experience and background related to this lesson as well. Okay, guys. Abdullah, you can't hear me. How about others? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, perfect. I think you might have a problem with your audio, Abdullah. Maybe you can try to change the settings. Okay. So again, for today we're going to learn lesson 3 um from blues. No, you don't need to turn on your video. You can chat. You can just type in your messages. Right now, the um, um, Zoom is configured wherein I can only receive your messages. So I can see your messages. Just type in if you have any questions, and I'll read out the question and I'll answer it also after. Okay, got it. So again, lesson 3 is more on the software development life cycle, bug life cycle, and a little bit overview of JIRA. So again, software development life cycle, based from the previous classes, I've been asked a lot of times, why do we need to learn software development life cycle? And is this related to testing at all? So my answer would be we need to know or we need to learn software development lifecycle, complete the end-to-end software development lifecycle process because when you join into a project or join in a client, it's not usually the start of testing. You might join in the middle of the planning or different phases of software development lifecycle. So if you know what are the activities involved in each phase or in each step, then it will be an advantage for you. And also, sometimes, as based from my experience, there's also interviewers who ask about SDLC. So that's also good if you know that information as well. So that's why we are learning SDLC, just to make sure that everyone is familiar with how SDLC works, from planning to deployment and maintenance. From Jennifer, is the chat visible to everyone? No, it's only visible to me. Yeah, so to prevent distraction from others from chatting, um, Zoom is disabled to have a chat with others, so it's only to me. All the messages you're sending, I'm only able to see it, not everyone. Sandy, will we be going over the quiz questions from lesson 2? No, this is entirely for lesson 3. I'm not sure about the quiz on lesson 2 anyway. Maybe you can check with the admin support what's going to be the next step for the quiz, if there will be a review, or you will be able to get the results or answers. Okay. So how software is made and how the software development process happens. As you can see from the image on the right, or the photo on the right, I think this woman and man is trying to build furniture from scratch. And they're looking at the manual, the user manual, and they have their tools in place. Like, they have a hammer, they have probably a screwdriver, and all the bolts and all the nuts. So that's also similar to how a software is developed. So similar to like buying an item or a furniture in IKEA and build it from scratch. So a software is somehow similar to that process as well. So when you go to IKEA, you try to purchase an item, and then when you bought it, you go home, you try to unbox it and see the contents of it. Then you go straight to the user manual and see what are the uh, um, tools or items or materials included in the package that you have bought, and you try to build the furniture. So same with the software development. We also start with gathering the requirements, building it from scratch, getting the all the necessary documents. You test it, you develop it, and you deploy it. So that's somehow similar. And I think you're also familiar with IKEA, or building any furniture from scratch, probably from Amazon or from Walmart or Target. So think of it as, similar, but instead of creating a software, you're just creating a product, or you're building a product from scratch. So before we continue with this lesson, let's just try to create a scenario wherein we can apply this scenario throughout the SDLC stages, or the software development lifecycle processes or stages. So for example, I'm the client, so I don't have. This is just an example. I don't have any IT background. I don't know how to build a software from scratch, and I just have a wonderful idea, or a brilliant idea, and a vision. For example, I wanted to create a social media platform. I could name it Facegram. So it's a fusion between Facebook and Instagram. So I have all the details on my mind. I want this page, I want this page, I want this, and I want that. However, I only have the vision. I don't have all the documents, I don't have all the requirements written out, and I don't know where to start. I don't know how to develop a software, or an application, or a program. So usually I would hire a team of people who will help me with my software development. So these are the steps for or the phases of SDLC, or we also call it stages, that me and my team needs to go through to develop a program, which is phasegram. And for example, for this phasegram, I have a budget of $100,000, and I want it to be up and running. I want it to be complete and accessible by the end clients or end users in probably 6 to 8 months. So let's just take note of that. I have a budget of $100,000 and I have a timeline of 6 to 8 months. So with that budget and with that timeline, um, it will be the input for the planning. Also, all the ideas about the phasegram, the budget, the timeline will be input for planning. And after planning, we'll be talking more about the other stages, which is this design, the development, the testing, the deployment, and maintenance. Okay, so planning. What is the planning stage? So this is the first phase in the software development process. It identifies necessities for a new software to achieve business objectives. The purpose of this step is to find out the scope of the problem and determine solutions. So like I mentioned earlier, this necessities um, identify necessities for a new software to achieve business objectives. So as a client, I have a business objective to create a facegram application that will disrupt the industry. So this is something new. This is something new platform, a social media, and I wanted for everyone to use it, in 6 to 8 months. So that is my business objectives and the problem and determine solutions. So I have I wanted to have a platform wherein I can do like sharing of photos and engaging the community as well. So probably those are the problem and those are the solutions as well. So through the planning phase, there are different activities that takes place. So some of it are, or most of it are resource allocation, capacity planning, project scheduling, cost estimation, and requirements. So during the planning phase, who are the people involved? First would be the project manager. Second would be the business analysts or the product owners. And sometimes during the planning phase, we also have the UI or UX team or the um, user interface, user experience team, content team, legal team who works with the requirements as well. But mainly, this stage, the main responsible is the business analyst and the project manager. So usually, the project managers or business analysts or product owners are hired first through the start of the software development lifecycle. And as the project manager, these four are his or her main responsibility: resource allocation, capacity planning, project scheduling, and cost estimation. From my example earlier for the phasegram, how much is my budget again? It's $100,000. So with that budget, working budget, the project manager will try to work with the budget, $100,000 with a 6 months timeline. So how many developers, how many QA, how many release management team do I need to hire? Will they be able to support the project in X number of days, X number of months? So with the given costs or given budget, then they'll try to work it out and try to create an appropriate budget structure for them or a work breakdown structure for them. So that is mostly about cost estimation. This is mostly related to the budget. Then the project scheduling is just usually the project schedule, the project timeline, from day one to the last day of the project, which is 6 or 8 months. Then the project manager will just highlight or list down all the high level activities like gather requirements, review requirements, sign off requirements for the planning phase, for the design, create this document, create that, develop, testing. So the project manager will work with a high level uh, schedule and timeline of the project. So they usually use a Gantt chart. If you're familiar with it or if you have heard of it, a Gantt chart, it's just a chart. They have a template in Excel or in Google Sheet, or they usually use MS Project or any project management tool. So it consists of the activities, the start date, the end date, how many days, who will work on that, the predecessors of that, and what will be the milestone or the deliverables for each activity. So that is the project scheduling. The next one would be the capacity planning and resource allocation. So actually, this three works hand in hand. So project scheduling is more on the activities. Capacity planning, or sorry, I'll just go first with resource allocation. So once I have the project schedule laid out, I have created the lists of the activities that will take place for this project. Then I'll go next with the resource allocation. So who does what? So the project scheduling answers what. So what are the activities? Resource allocation answers the who question. Who will do these activities? So for the requirements, so I have an activity. Activity one is to schedule an interview with the clients to get the requirements. So who will do that? Most likely it's going to be the business analysts. And then review requirements, it's still the business analyst. Sign off the requirements, still the business analyst. So for the developers, who will develop? And for the test team, who will test and who will deploy all those information. So resource allocation is just a process or an activity wherein we allot or we allocate resource in the project scheduling or the project plan who will do these activities. Capacity planning is the capacity of the resource. So I already have the activity in the project schedule. I already have resources allocated for each activity. Then I will need to do the capacity planning. Capacity planning is just scheduling the hours, days, or the work hours that each resource needs to work for that specific activity. So going back to the requirements or the planning stage, so the schedule in the project plan is to gather requirements. Who is the resource allocated for that? It's the business or it's the product owners. Then the capacity planning, how many hours are they going to do, or how many hours are they going to spend on that activity? So probably it will start on day one and it will end in day two or day three. So that is capacity planning. You are just planning how many hours this resource will work on that specific activity. So that's the meaning of these three activities. So that's why I said it that they work hand in hand. So again, project scheduling is like a project plan. You have all the activities laid out. Resource allocation is allocating resource who's going to work for that specific activity. And capacity planning is more on the when part, or answers the when. When are they going to finish? When are they going to start? And how many hours are they going to spend for this specific activity? Okay, are we clear with that, guys, for this four? So mostly, again, this is done by the project manager. And lastly, the requirements. So requirements is done by the business analysts. So remember I told you guys, or I mentioned about me as the client. I have all my vision, all of my ideas on my head, on my mind, and I don't have it written in any documents or not documents or not documented at all. So that's the purpose of the business analysts or the product owners. So they usually schedule and do a discovery meeting or discovery session. That's what it's called. They try to gather all the requirements. So they schedule an interview with me. So for example, I'm the client or I'm the customer. So if I'm the client, the business analyst will try to schedule several meetings with me, interview me, discover the requirements. So what do I want to achieve at the end of the SDL, sorry, SDLC. So I wanted a program, I wanted an application. Will it be a web application? Will it be a mobile? What are the different pages? What will be the colors? What will be the theme? What will happen with this? What will happen with that? So basically, how the program will work, but mostly on a business perspective, like who will be the users for this application? What will be the impact? What will be the result of this? And so on and so forth. So that is what happens on the requirements activity on or the bullet number 5. Usually the business analysts work with the client or the stakeholder to gather all the requirements and document the requirements. So they can document it in a Google Sheet, or sorry, in a Google Docs or a Google or a Microsoft Word. Basically, there's no required document or format for that, and they usually follow a certain template for that as well. So that document is called a BRD, or a business requirement document. So that is the output for the business analysts. Um, so again, for the planning phase, there's mostly two outputs. One is the project plan from the project managers, which consists all this four. And then another one would be the BRD, or the business requirements document. So the business requirements document, it's main responsibility of the business analysts or the product owners who will work with the other phases. So those are the inputs. Sorry, those are the outputs for this, and these outputs will be later on used on other stages or phases of the SDLC. Okay, guys. Is that clear? Do you have any question? I think we have one from Ibrahim. Can you give another example of requirements? Another example of requirements. So, what are the pages? So I will have login. I will have sign up. I will have post. I will have share. I will have all this and all that. So basically, how or what will the different aspects of the application or program that will be added in the BRD. From Jan, why is it important for us to know this information? Again, because it's the ideal scenario where you will try to work for a client or for a project. It's not usually the start of the testing. Sometimes you will be joining at the start of the SDLC process, which is the planning phase. So at least you know what stages will take place in software development lifecycle. And some of these are related to testing as well. Like the BRD is input for the testing phase or stage. So at least you know those information. And sometimes these are also asked during the interviews. So having this information will be helpful in you during your project and during your job hunt, or looking for a project or looking for a job as well. From Pierre, from Pirina, could you go over again what are the inputs and outputs, please? Sure. So the input for this is just the information from the stakeholders, and then the output would be the project plan from the project managers, and BRD, or business requirement documents, from the business analysts, BAs, or the product owners or the POs. From Aziz John, so the functionalities and capabilities, the requirements. Yes, Aziz John, correct. So the requirements will focus more on the functionalities, capabilities, and the requirements, but mostly just high level or business related, or from the business perspective. Like the technical piece will be discussed later on. From Christopher, will we have access to the slides after the lesson, as we did with yesterday's lesson? Yes, you will have access to this. The admin will share this to you through the dashboard or through the email. From James, please could you go through the cost estimation again? Okay, sure. So cost estimation is just for the budget. So for example, from my example earlier, I wanted to build a software or a platform called FaceGram with $100,000 as a budget that needs to be developed. The program needs to be developed in 6 to 8 months. So with that budget, the project manager will try to work out a plan for that budget and for that timeline. So from that, I will be able to derive how many developers, how many technical team will I need to hire, and will I be able to support this project with this X number of budget. So usually the case is we go over budget. If that's the case, then you just need to work with the client and ask them that, hey, I think the budget is too low with your requirements, with your ideas and vision and ambition. I think we need to have more budget than that. You can say that you need extra $20,000 or $30,000. So that's the cost estimation. It's just an estimate, and versus the actual charges. So mostly this is done and maintained by the project managers. From Ibrahim, QA joins in after all the stages. Yes, I'll be able to discuss that later. From Sheila, product requirement document is the same as BRD. It's I would say it's not the same. There's somehow similar. So a BRD is more on the business perspective of the product or of the application, and it's done by the business analysts. PRD, or the product requirement document, is mostly about the product, and it's done usually by the product or the client or the users or the clients. So it's more on, or it focuses more on the product. Um, However, the BRD focuses more on the business requirements. So what the clients wants versus the PRD is what is the product itself. So that's the difference between the two. Don't worry about this documents, guys. Lesson 5, I think, we will discuss more, or the instructor will discuss more about these documents, and they'll provide you more examples on that. So for this lesson, it's just more on the overview of what happens or what takes place on each stages. From Eduardo, our agile project management used for most of the software application projects instead of the traditional waterfall methodology. Method software development lifecycle or software methodologies will be discussed on lesson 4. But to answer your question, based from experience, Agile is mostly used in software development um, as a methodology for software development. From my experience, I have used Agile ever since. And the last project or the last client I have worked with Waterfall was way back 2014, 2015. So imagine it's been 6 or 5 months already wherein I have worked with Waterfall. But there are still projects who still prefer Waterfall methodology over Agile. So again, those will be discussed on a separate course, more on the Agile and Waterfall methodology. From Ibrahim, does QA analyst join in during or after this process? Usually depends. Sometimes the project managers or business analysts are hired first, so they can work with the planning phase. And then once they have created the project plan and determine how many QA professionals or QA engineers they need, then that's the time they hire um, the QAs. Because at this point in time, planning stage, there's not much involvement of the QA. Usually, it happens on the next stages. So that's why they don't hire or they don't join or they don't get QAs at this point in time. From Lydia, what do we do when we have questions on the quiz when had last night? You can contact the admin support. So later on, I'll share you the email or on how you can contact the admin support. Because to be honest, I don't have access to the dashboard, so I don't have visibility on that. But I'll help you with getting through the admin support. From Malik, which method is better to perform, agile versus waterfall? So it actually depends on the type of project you're working. And usually the type of methodology is discussed or determined by the management early on the start of the SDLC, or early on the or during the planning phase. But for my personal choice, it would be agile, because you are involved early on the process, so you get to test. You don't need to wait for 5 6 months just to test. So in agile, you test every week, every 2 weeks, so at least you are part, or you are involved early on the process, instead of for waterfall, you are involved towards the end of the stages, or the SDLC. So again, those will be discussed later on, I think lesson 4. So you'll have more information on that. From Malik, yeah, the agile is more flexible. From Lydia, can you please repeat the people involved in the planning? Yeah, for planning, yes, the involved here are project managers who will do all these four, and the business owner, or the business analyst, or the product owners will work on their requirements. Okay, guys, I think we've spent so much time on this slide already. So if you have questions, just let me know. Let's move on to the next. So next would be the design phase. So once the requirements are understood, so we already have the BRT, software architects and developers can begin to design the software. So the design process uses established patterns for application architecture and software development. So system design helps in specifying approach to development and in defining overall system architecture. The system design specifications serve as input for the next phase of the cycle. Okay, I'll just stop there. So after the requirements are done, the business requirements document, or the PRD, product requirements document. So that will serve as an input for this stage, which is the design stage. So usually the software architects or the developers are involved in the design phase. They try to design the software. So they select the system architecture, the software architecture, what type of tools are they going to use, what types of technologies they're going to use and implement. So the output for this will be the design document, or the SDS. So SDS, or the system design specifications or technical specifications. So this will include all that information, all technical related information to the application. So are they going to use what programming tool or what programming language, what servers, all the hardware, also like servers, networks, all those information, software also, what tools are they going to use, database servers, and all those information. They will also have like different diagrams, like ERD, or entity relationship diagram for the database. They will have all the architectural diagrams. So everything that is technical, that is related to the application, and how will the application will be built technically. It will go into the SDS, or the system design specifications. So the input for this is the business requirements document, and from that they will try to create the output document, which is the system design specifications, and they will try to create all the technical related requirements for this, for the application, or for the facegram, as an example. And lastly, in this phase, the design phase, QA comes up with a test strategy where they mention what to test and how to test. So early as the design phase, the QA are already involved in the SDLC. Um, Mostly QA lead or QA manager creates the test strategy. So test strategy is just a document. It's also called a test plan document. So they just follow a specific template. So this document discussed what is going to be tested, what are the scopes, what are the out of scopes, what will be the testing timeline, what who will be the test team who will going to test the application, what are the testing activities, will there be regression, will there be automation, what will be the testing tools, how are they going to generate the test results, test execution status, where are they going to store that, where are they going to store the defects or the bugs as well. So basically, a test strategy is just a document that discuss all those topics that I have mentioned. So you don't need to worry about that. There's a specific template that you can use for the test plan or test strategy. You can look up, you can Google it and look for a test strategy document online, or sometimes you can use test strategy um, template from your previous work or from your previous project. Just make sure to just remove all the information. Or sometimes the organization or the company provides this test strategy or test plan document template. So you don't need to worry about that. And usually this is done by the QA lead or the QA manager, and they consult the team or they discuss this information with the QA team as well. So they usually, in order to create the test strategy, usually they also use the BRD or the SDS as an input for this document. So they study, they read the requirements, and from that information, they try to come up with a strategy on how they're going to test the application. Okay, so that's the design phase. Again, the people involved here are mostly the software architects and the developers, or let's say just the dev lead or the dev manager who has a lot of experience designing softwares. So yeah, they create SDS and technical specifications based from the requirements from the planning phase or using the BRD. And also, like towards the end of the design phase, QA starts to come up with the test strategy or the test plan document. Okay, are we good with this? Any questions so far? Okay, moving on to the next would be the development phase. Oh, okay. Do you have questions as this, John? Yeah, just let me know if you have questions. Okay. So again, this is the development phase. So this phase involves the actual coding and programming of the software. So after the requirements, so the requirements we are talking about here are the business requirements document, and the design activity is complete. So meaning we already have the SDS and the technical specifications. So the next phase of the software development lifecycle is the implementation or development of the software. So okay. So this is the time the developers will do the actual coding or scripting of the software. So based from what was discussed on the SDS or the systems design specification, so they have agreed to use, for example, Java as the main programming language, and for example, they're going to use MySQL or Oracle for the database. So the developers will try to install this softwares into their workstation. Then they will work on the coding or programming of the software. So they will do it based from the requirements as well. So for example, if there are 100 requirements, business requirements or functional requirements, then that's the time they will, try to create that script for that or codes for that. Developers also write unit tests for each component to test the new code that they have written. Unit tests. So unit tests are mainly the responsibility of the developers. So unit test is just testing the component that they have created. For example, they have created one function that will let the customer log in. So that is something new, that's a new code. Then they need to create tests or they need to create unit tests for that, just making sure that the codes that they have written are working as expected and still working, or generally it's working. So that's the purpose of the unit test, just to make sure that the components or lines of codes or blocks of codes are working as expected. It doesn't throw any error, and it's functioning as intended or working as intended. So that is the main goal of the unit tests. And then they also review each other's code. So this is also called as peer review. So they peer review, like for example, I have three developers. So developer one reviews developer two's code, developer two reviews developer three's code, then developer three reviews developer one's code. So they review each other's code. Why? Because they wanted to make sure that other set of eyes are looking at the codes and making sure that they follow the standards, coding standards. They follow, certain protocols for creating codes, all those stuff, just to make sure that they have followed all those rules related to development. So that is peer review. And then they also create builds and deploy software to an environment. So when we say builds, mostly these developers work with their workstation and they use a code repository. So what is a code repository? A code repository is a tool or a program or a software, a storage for their codes. So they usually check out or they download the file that they're going to to change with their codes, then they check back in that file to the code repository. So every time they changes the code, it will create a build. That is called a build. A build is just a version. So if I have file that is version 1.1 and I change that, then the build or the version will be 1.2. So creating builds is just versions of the codes, and deploying it to the software or deploying the software or codes to an environment. So deploying or deployment is similar to release or just transferring of files from one environment to another environment. So I'm talking more about builds, deploy, and environment. So for some, this might be something new terminologies, but don't worry about that. There's a separate session or a separate lesson for this, for the in builds, deploy, and environment. So again, this is just an overview of the development phase, so you don't need to worry about that. And again, lastly, this cycle of development is repeated until the requirements are met. So like I mentioned, there's 100 requirements. And for example, we have three developers. So the development lead or the development manager will try to assign the requirements to the developers. So developer one will have 30 requirements to work on. Developer two will have 30 requirements. And developer three will have 40 requirements to work on. So depending on their capacity, so they will try to complete or they will try to code all the requirements until the requirements are met. So they do it repeatedly. Okay. So we have a question from Sheila. When does the UI come into picture? Good question. So UI, like I mentioned, there's a separate team for UI or UX team, or user interface or user experience team who works with the wireframe or the mock-up, the content. So usually it happens through the design phase also. So based from the, or sometimes early on the planning phase, and it goes through the design phase. So the UI team creates the actual layout of the system, like what will be the text size for this, the font size, the font face, what will be the colors, what will be the CSS or the cascading style sheets. Everything related to the UI will be created entirely by the UI UX team. Okay. So for example, the application will have 5 different pages: log in, register, create post, share a post. So all those pages will have a mock-up or a wireframe document wherein they just try to create the layout for that specific pages. So again, it's done usually in using sorry, the content or the work wireframes are done starting the planning phase, then extends towards the design phase. Okay. Um, so Ibrahim, so QA testers work closely with the developers and help them test new codes? No. So I think you're referring to unit testing. My answer is no, or the answer is no. Again, unit tests are done by the developers. QAs or testers are not involved in unit tests for the main reasons we're not developers. We are not familiar with the codes. We're not familiar with how to use the programs they are using. So if we are involved in this, then it will just create issues, and or it will just create potentially issues or bugs. So that's why developers are main responsible for creating and executing unit testing. So we're not seeing the results of the unit tests. So the assumption is once the codes are deployed in the QA environment, the assumption would be the developers have completed the unit tests for all the new codes that they have developed. Okay. From Geraldine, when reviewing each other's code, is that considered as integration testing? No. The answer is no. So peer review or reviewing each other's code is done in the development environment. So again, QA doesn't have access to the development environment. So only the developers have access to the development environment, and the developers review each other's code, or they conduct peer review. Integration testing is testing the codes once they have been integrated or deployed in the QA environment. So meaning they have completed the integration between development and QA. So that's the time you will do the integration testing. From Eduardo, does QA also perform testing on the unit code? I've already answered that. No. Again, is not involved in unit testing. It's done by the developers. Sheila, flow, I think this is related to the UI question. Yep, they also do the flow for that. So the UI UX team works closely with the business with this to create the UI and the UX, or the user interface documents and the user experience documents. Do we create test cases for those two? Yes. So there's also called as usability testing. So usability testing is more on the user experience of the application. So that is also done. We also have user interface testing, wherein we test if everything is followed by, or if everything is followed and developed exactly as what is stated in the user interface or the wireframe. So yeah, based from example, we also create test cases for that, just to make sure that the layout is exactly what was developed. Eduardo, integrated sections. Are you referring to the integrated testing? If yes, then yes. Ibrahim, UX stands for user experience. So UI/UX. So UI is user interface, UX is user experience. Okay, any other questions for the development phase? Okay, moving on to the next. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So after the development is complete, here comes the testing stage or testing phase. So during testing, QA starts to test the software against the requirements. So what is so how will I put this? So what is our go signal that it's the start of testing or the start of the testing phase or this testing stage? So usually our go signal is once the developers provided their sign off that they have completed the development work and they have deployed or released the requirements or the codes in the QA environment. That's the time we start our testing. So the sign off usually comes through, um, verbally communicating it through the team. If you work closely with the developers, you just work side by side, then they'll just inform you, hey, we have deployed these codes to the QA environment. You can start your testing. So that's one form of sign off. Another one would be through emails, through um, chats. If you're using Slack, if you're using Skype, if you're using other messaging tools, they can also provide their sign off there. They can also create a sign off document, but that's not usually the case. And lastly, they use project management tools such as JIRA or other project management tools wherein they just move the status of the requirements they are working into QA review or done or depending on the status of the requirement. So those are the methods they provide their sign off that they are done with the development. Again, one is through verbally, second is through emails or through chat in the channels or into the messaging tool. Another one is a form of a document. And lastly, through a tool such as JIRA. So they just move the requirements from development to QA. So those are the methods. So after we have received their sign off, then that's the time we will start our testing. So testing, usually we test against the requirements. So I'll discuss that. So testing the requirements is number two. So I'll discuss that more in detail later. So of course, when we are doing testing, we will find defect. Once we have find a defect, or also known as bugs, then we'll inform the developers who will fix and create a new version of the software, which needs to be verified again. Verified again is similar to retesting. So after we have logged a bug, the developers fix them, then that's the time we will retest that bug. Again, we will test more on bug lifecycle and reporting them later on. So let's just park this for now. So this cycle is repeated until all the requirements have been tested and all the defects or bugs have been fixed and the software is ready to be shipped or ready to be deployed to the next environment. So these are the or these are the activities that QA performs or do during the testing phase. So basically, the main goal of the testers is to test the software against the requirements. However, they need to do test cases or create test cases first. So there's usually two phases of the testing stage. One is the test case development or test case creation or test planning, and another one is the test execution. Usually depends on the QA lead or QA manager how they will try to schedule this. Sometimes test planning is shorter than test execution. Sometimes it's 50-50. Like, for example, if we have 3 months or 2 months for testing, we allot 1 month for test planning. We allot test execution for another month. However, it depends on the QA team, it depends on the QA lead, it depends on the requirements, how they're going to schedule these activities. So basically, test case creation or test case are just creating test cases based from the requirements from the upper or from the previous stages. So the testers will use BRDs, PRDs, SDS, technical specifications, the UI, the wireframe, the UX content document. So they will try to understand all those requirements, and then that's the time they will create test cases for that. So you will apply here the positive, the negative, the boundary analysis, equivalent, or um, BAV techniques or testing. You can apply that to create test cases. And then once you are done with creating test cases, you will have it reviewed by the business. Ask them if, hey, can you review this test cases that we have created? And then the business will review, just making sure that we have included a specific test case for each requirement. And after the test cases are signed off, then that's the time um, we will start the test execution. So test execution is just going through the test cases you have created and just trying to execute them, meaning that you will follow the steps. Then based from the expected results and actual results, you will decide if that test case passed or that test case failed. So here comes number 3. If the test case failed, for example, your test case is testing the login button or the login functionality. So the requirement is the system will display an error message if the user enters an invalid credentials or account credentials like username or password. So that's the test case. You are executing that, and then when you enter an invalid account credentials, you were logged in successfully. So obviously that is a bug because the expected result of the test case is you should get an error message or the system will display an error message. So that's the time you will report a bug. So a bug is just an error, a flaw, or a failure that is not the intended result or not the expected result. So you will log a bug for that. And after you log a bug or you reported a bug, then that's the time the developers will fix it and it will be deployed or it will be installed back to QA environment for you to test and retest that bug. So after you have done number one, number 2, and number 3, that's the time you provide sign off. Again, the methods are similar to the developer sign off. So we can provide sign off through verbally, like we can say it through a meeting, or if we are working together or side by side with the developers and the team, then you can provide your sign off saying that, hey, we have completed the test execution, all test cases are passed, and all bugs are closed and fixed. So you can say that. Again, you can also say that through email messages. You can email blast or send an email to the group or to the team saying that we have completed the testing and closed all bugs. Or you can also mention that through the channel or through the Slack channel or any messaging tool you are using. And another form is through a document. So here for testing, we maintain test results or test execution status and results. So it's just a result of our testing, all the test cases, what's the status, if it's passed or failed, and what's the corresponding bug ID for that. Then that's the time, we use that to provide our sign off. So again, we can send that to them saying that this is the result of our testing and we are done. So that's considered a sign off also. And lastly, what's the last? I forgot. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. So through verbally, through email, or through chat, or the fourth one is, oh, sorry, I remember the fourth one now. So again, first is verbally, second is through email or chat, lastly is through documents. such as the test execution results and status. And fourth would be through the project management tool like JIRA. So after you have tested that specific requirements, you just move the status like QA done or QA complete or QA review or QA done. So you just move the requirements from one status to another status. Then the other teams will look into the to that tool and they will see the requirements are tested and QA is done with the testing as well. So that's what QA provide sign-off activity is. I think we have questions from the sign-off. Yeah, I think I've answered that. Sorry, who answered? Ibrahim, what is QA provide sign-off? Yeah, I think I've answered that already just now. We also have from Blues, sign-off doesn't always mean being finished, right? No, sign off means we are finished. So we cannot provide our sign off saying that, hey, we completed testing, but we still have one remaining test case. So the assumption is when you provided your sign off, you're done with the testing. However, testing on a specific environment. So if you are testing in the QA environment, so you're done with that, then you can provide your sign off. From Sheila, in case of web applications, is there a specific environments where QA tests? Yes. So these specific environments are mentioned in the test strategy or test plan document. So remember that there's a test strategy. So the QA lead or the QA manager will list out the specific environments they are going to test. And also, if this is a web application, this is the time, in the business requirements document or the SDS or the technical specifications, there's also a section there which involves about their environments. So if it's a web application, they will mention which browsers they are going to support, whether they're going to support Chrome, Firefox, IE, or Edge, or if it's a mobile application, what are the devices are supported. So again, all these environments will be mentioned or documented in the requirements as well. So you don't need to you don't need to worry about the specific environments to test because it will be mentioned in the requirements document, whether it's in BRD or in SDS or the systems design specification. For the QA environment, staging environment, so you'll have more details on this on the lesson 10, I think, for the deployment and environments. Christopher, are all these acronyms and terms available in one place on a slide or a PDF somewhere? No, I don't think they are stored anywhere else. Let me send it to you later, probably during the break or by the end of this course. Speaking of break, let's probably have this break after we have finished the slide. Okay, yeah, I think there's no, I think that's the last question. Okay, okay, we have another one from Ibrahim. When QA signs off, does it always mean they're done with the test and no bugs found? Yes. So that's the definition of sign off, meaning they have executed all the test cases and it's all passed. There's no failed, there's no blocked, everything is passed. And for the bugs, all the bugs are fixed, meaning the developers fixed it, you have retested it, and all the bugs are closed. So you cannot provide your sign off until you have reached that state wherein you have executed and you have closed all the bugs. However, there's something called as testing checklist, test entry, or test exit criteria. So these are just criteria when to start the testing and when to end the testing. So this is usually part of the testing strategy also. And This is agreed upon the testing team and the QA lead or the QA manager. So one portion of the testing exit criteria is the percentage of the test cases. So sometimes they are good with 97% pass rate, meaning 97% of the test cases are completed and passed. For example, if you have 100 test cases, 97 of it are are passed, then you can provide your sign off already. So that's the purpose of the test exit criteria. So that is the time wherein you can say that you have completed your testing or you can provide your sign off. But ideally, we need to have 100% test case execution and passed, and 100% bugs are closed and fixed. Okay. Do we write the test cases or do developers do that? No, Eduardo. Writing of test cases are done by the QA or by the testers, not the developers. Developers' responsibility is to develop or code the software or the requirements. Testers' responsibility is to test the software by creating test cases and executing them and logging of bugs and retesting of bugs. Okay. And lastly, number 5, requirements. So there's another document that we maintain or we create. It's called RTM, or Requirements Traceability Matrix. So the purpose of that document is to make sure that we have tested all the requirements. So it's just a document. There's a template available. Most likely the organization or the company will provide that document. So it's just a mapping of the requirements and test cases. So meaning you have a corresponding test case for each requirement. For example, if you have requirements for the login functionality, that is requirement 1, login, then just make sure that you have added the test cases that is related to the login functionality or requirement. So for example, login 1 or requirement 1 for login, you just put it on the next column. What are the test cases related to the login? The main goal of Requirements Traceability Matrix, or RTM, is to achieve 100% requirements coverage. What does it mean? It means that we have tested all the requirements and we have a corresponding test case for each requirement. Okay, guys, is that clear? So that's the purpose of the Requirements Traceability Matrix. So RTM, let me just type that for you. I'm not sure why it's my keyboard. So from the word itself, traceability, and it's a matrix. So requirements, we have requirements on the left side. We have test cases on the right side. So we just match them, which requirements or which test cases goes with this requirement. So it's just like a matrix. Again, the purpose is to make sure that all the requirements are covered in our test cases. So you don't need to worry about the document or the template. So it will be provided to you, or you can just use an existing template in Google and you can use that as well. Sheila, this is a high level document. Yeah, basically it's just pretty straightforward. Just think of it as you have 2 columns, one for the requirement and other for the test case ID or the test case. So you just need to map out which test case belongs to which requirement. So it's just high level. Yeah, you don't need to be detailed about that. So if we have found some P4, P3 bugs, then we can sign off at 98 and 99%. Yeah, yes, as is John. So there are bugs that are low priority bugs. So P3 or P4. I'll discuss about that later on when we reach to the bug reports. So if a bug is not considered as priority or critical, and sometimes the developers doesn't fix that, or they try not to fix that, then that's fine. You don't need to wait for that bugs to provide your sign off. All Okay, let me just update, or let me just mention that again. So you can provide your sign off once all test cases are executed and passed, and all critical bugs or high priority bugs are closed and fixed. So meaning if there's low priority bugs that are still not fixed, and you have talked to the developers that they are not planning to fix it, then yeah, that's the time that you can provide your sign off. So you don't need to wait for them to fix that, because that's low priority and there's a high chance that it will not be fixed. So you don't need to wait for that. Then you can provide your sign off. Yeah, yes, as is John. Yeah, so you can talk with the developers too. You know, software development lifecycle is a collaboration with other people as well. So business analysts, developers, project managers, you have this stand-ups in Agile, stand-up meeting in Agile, or you have this meeting in Waterfall. So you interact with other people in the team. So it's not like you are in the testing stage or testing phase, and you are not allowed to talk with the developers or other people as well. So the ideal scenario, you will talk to them a lot, because you need to clarify things, you need to check with them about the requirements, about how to test this in QA, what are the requirements, what are needed. So there's a chance, or there will always be a chance to talk with them. So again, communication is important in software development lifecycle. If you are in doubt, then talk to them, ask them for clarification, or if they can confirm if this is correct or if that is not correct. Okay, guys. Any other questions? Can we just finish this before we go on a break? So that we finish the software development lifecycle. So this is pretty short slide, the deployment. Then after this, we can have a break. Okay. So the deployment. So once the product is tested, meaning the testers already provided their sign off, they have completed the testing, and they have closed all the critical and high priority bugs, then that is the time the software or the product is ready to be deployed, and released formally in the appropriate market. So sometimes product deployment happens in stages as per the business strategy of that organization. The product may be first released in a limited segment and tested in the real business environment. So appropriate market here refers to production, meaning production it's available for end clients use, meaning us as the customers or the end users. That's what's called production. So meaning production it's accessible by everyone. So if you remember, what type of testing is this? The product may be first released in a limited segment. So that's the keyword, limited segment, in tested in the real business environment or prod. So do you know what type of testing is this? Yes, Christopher, that is correct. As is Sean, that is correct. Sheila, Blues, yes, it is beta testing. So beta testing is testing by a limited number of users in production. Okay, so that's beta testing. So as soon as the product is available to the customer, QA executes sanity testings while users do the beta testing. Okay, it's also mentioned here. Yeah, yes, Eduardo, beta is external, got it. So alpha testing, just not to be confused with alpha and beta, alpha testing is done in the lower environments or done usually by the QA. So everything that you can think of testing, regression, sanity, smoke, integration, end to end, all those testing performance are done in the alpha testing, which is done in the QA environment. If it goes to production and the users are testing, a small number of users or limited users are testing in production, that is called beta testing. So how do you perform, or how are you involved in how you can be involved in beta testing? Simply by signing up. Sometimes um, the software or product, they provide a sign up button where you can participate in a beta testing. So you can also do that. Alpha and beta done in stages. Yeah. So I would say yes. So alpha is done first since it's alpha. So it's mostly done by the QAs, and beta testing is usually happens in production after everything or every all testing done by the QAs are complete. So that is beta is done in production. Is alpha test same as sanity test? So alpha test is like a big umbrella. So sanity test is under or a category of alpha testing. So all types of testing is under alpha tests, meaning all testing that you need to do in QA is considered as alpha tests. Okay. So lastly, if any changes are required or if any bugs are caught, then they will report it to the engineering team. So the engineering team, so there's a separate team who maintains and supports production. So once the product has gone live or has been deployed to production, so there's a specific or separate engineering team who will support and maintain this product. So it's not our responsibility anymore once we go to production to maintain and support all the changes in production. However, if there are any bugs encountered by the real users, then the developers need to fix that, and us QA needs to retest that before it goes back to production, before that fix is back to production. So for example, um, in Facebook, you're not able to share a post. When you click share button, you're getting an error message. So the customer will report that to the customer service, or they will try to call in, or there's probably a feedback button in Facebook. Then they can just add, or they can just say that the share button is not working. Then the developers will try to look for that bug and see what went wrong or what could be the possible issue. Then they will fix that. Once the fix is ready, they will not deploy it back to production first. So the next thing that they need to do is the QA needs to test that in the QA environment and making sure that the bug is fixed. So meaning in QA environment, they're able to share a post or a comment. Then if it passed, then that's the time it will be deployed to production. So again, that's just an example, and you'll have more details about deployment, release, and environment, and having all these environments, QA, dev, staging in the succeeding lessons. So it's just an example of how the deployment works. Um, from Aziz John, so we test in during the testing phase and the deployment phase as alpha tests. Um, So your first question, sorry. So there's an end. So meaning we need to do all of this. So no. We do the testing. We test during testing phase, correct? However, we don't do alpha testing in the deployment phase. We do the alpha testing in QA environment or staging environment. We do alpha testing in the lower environments or the QA or the staging environment or sometimes the dev environment. Okay. If we don't have questions, guys, we can have a quick break. How about a 6-minute break? We can come back at 55, 6:55 or 9:55. Are you good with that, guys? So you can just have a quick bathroom break or just try to drink. Then we can continue after that. And we just, why is my keyboard not working? Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, guys. You can take your break. Let me just send this to everyone. Hey guys, welcome back. Hey guys, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Yep. So I've sent you um the acronyms and its definition, or the acronyms in the chat. Okay, I think we have one question from Marco. Um, will there be more testing in my experience in testing phase or maintenance phase? I would say 80 to 90% of the time you will be testing in the testing stage or testing phase. Why only 90%, not 100%? So there comes a time that you need to test during the maintenance phase, mostly bug retests or bug fixes tests in QA environment. So these bugs are related to the deployment or whatever the bugs that encountered by their customers, they will have to test that in QA. Tara, who produces the PRD, usually the product owners, or sorry, the end clients or end customers. Okay, so now I forgot we still have one more phase, the maintenance phase, before we go on a break. So briefly, the maintenance phase of the SDLC occurs after the product is in full operation. So meaning the product is already in production for quite some time now, meaning it's already been used by the actual customers, by actual end users. That's already in maintenance phase, meaning it's already been up and running for probably a month, a year. So we can call that it's already in maintenance phase. So maintenance of software can include software upgrades, repairs, and fixes of the software if it breaks. So these software upgrades, repairs, and fixes are related to the software and also hardware. Of course, technology evolves every single time. Then if there's any changes, then of course there will be upgrades and repairs that needs to be done in the product itself. So most likely these are not code changes. These are upgrades on the software or the tools that supports the product while it's in production. So this could be software server upgrades, hardware upgrades, security upgrades or patches or fixes. So these are happening during the maintenance phase. So these are the activities during the maintenance phase. So product analysts monitor user feedback. So there's a dedicated resource who monitors user feedback. So user feedback can be sent like through contact us or feedback. Like there's a feedback button on the website. So all those information are monitored by product analysts. So again, there's an engineering team dedicated who supports and maintain the product once it's in production and on the maintenance phase. So engineers monitor software errors that is related to upgrades, repairs, or fixes. Then QA identifies bugs that weren't caught during testing. So meaning these are the customer bugs. So customer bugs, so these are bugs that the QA failed to identify during their alpha testing. So these are the actual bugs that were encountered by the actual customers or the actual end users, which is not good, by the way, because meaning we didn't do our best in identifying all the bugs during QA or during the testing phase. So the ideal goal of the QA is to make sure that there will be no bugs that will go through production, or once the product has been live and running and used by the customers. However, that's not we cannot prevent that from happening because there are some other bugs that are introduced by software upgrades and software fixes or repairs. So once we identify the bugs, then engineers fix these bugs and update the software. And lastly, QA verifies the bug fixes. So again, from a previous example from the deployment, if there's a bug that was raised or encountered by the customer, then the developers will fix that in the developer's environment. Then it will be verified by the QA before we deploy or move that fix to the production environment. So again, I would say the participation in the maintenance phase is low, like 5%. We don't support much in the maintenance phase. We're not also involved much in maintenance phase. The only time that we are involved is through bug retests or bug fixes. Okay, so that's much about the maintenance and the SDLC phases or stages. So this is the last stage, which is maintenance phase. Just a disclaimer, guys. Like I mentioned earlier, I think one of the slides in the planning phase, SDLC is done for new software or new programs. That's not usually the case. I just wanted to point it out that we follow also SDLC stages, not just for new softwares or new programs. We do the SDLC stages also for new functionalities or if we are having new requirements. So for example, SDLC is software development lifecycle. For example, your application or your product is already in production and you wanted to do some changes, like you wanted to introduce on one page or 2 pages, then you can go through the SDLC again, just to make sure that you go with the planning, you go with the design and testing, development, and then you deploy it in the maintenance. So again, SDLC is not just for new programs or application, it also supports and it's also applicable for new features or new functionalities, or if you're updating the product, which is already in production. Okay, guys, that's the overview of the SDLC. Are we good with the SDLC or the software development lifecycle? Okay, so that concludes the SDLC. Now we talk about bugs. So we have encountered bugs, or I have mentioned bugs several times in the SDLC. So what is a software bug? So a software bug is an error, a flaw, a failure in a program which causes it to behave incorrectly or unexpectedly or not as designed. So as long as you see an error message or not an intended error message, so error message like error 404, not found, or unnecessary error message, flaw or failure, or you're not getting the expected result or the exact opposite of the expected result, then you can consider it as a bug. Okay, so everything that you see that is not the same as the expected result, that is considered a bug. Okay, so that is a bug. So what are the reasons why there are bugs in the software? Yes, Ibrahim. Is it safe to say QA find bugs and send to developers? Yes, that is correct. So there are many reasons for which software contains bugs, but the root causes of the defects or bugs can normally be classed into the following. So miscommunication or no communication at all. Like I mentioned earlier, communication is the key, as it's cliche as it may sound. Communication is the key in software development lifecycle as well. You need to communicate all the activities that are happening. For example, there is a scheduled deployment today. What do you call this? The developers are expected to move their codes in development environment to QA environment today. However, they are delayed, and they did not communicate that they are delayed in the development work. And QA started testing. So there wasn't communication at all that they are delayed, and QA started testing. And of course, if the codes are not in a QA environment, then how will the application will work? So we started testing and we see that this button is not working, this page is not working. Then we log a bug for that. Then once we log a bug, then the developers will look into the bug and they will see, hey, this is not a valid bug because we haven't deployed the changes in QA environment. So see, it's not a valid bug, or there's a bug raised because there's no communication at all, or there's miscommunication. So that's why communication is important. You talk to the developers, you talk to the business if you are testing it correctly, or if you need some extra steps before you test this specific requirements. Software complexity, of course, that will also introduce bugs. If the software is too complex and the requirements are not detailed as possible, for example, you are testing reports and that specific reports has a lot of computations and a lot of data into it, like billions of data, and documentations are not clear how to get that result, then expect for bugs on that because you cannot, understand what's how are you going to test that specific reports or that specific fields. So again, that is contributed to bugs, software complexity. Another one is change of requirements. User so ideally during the planning phase, we lock in the requirements. We baseline the requirements, meaning this is the final version of the requirements, so that the developers and tests will develop and test final version of the requirements. However, it's inevitable to have final requirements. Sometimes we have change requests or changing of the requirements. This change requests happens in the middle of the development sometimes, or middle of testing. So again, we've already created test cases from the final version of the test case or the requirements, and then suddenly they change the requirements. So again, that will introduce bugs in the software because we don't have enough time. The developers didn't have enough time to develop that, also that requirements, that change requests. And same as the QA, they don't have much time to test that change requests. So that might also contribute to a bug. Another one is related to development. The fourth and the fifth bullet are related to development. So software development tools and poorly documented code. So poorly documented code, for example, I am developer one. I created the codes for requirement one. And for some reason, I was on a medical leave and an emergency leave, and I have to go on a leave, and I will not be able to continue with the dev work. Another dev will take over on the updates of the test cases, or I'm sorry, the updates of the codes. And if that code is not properly documented, so how will the developer or the new developer will continue or take over if the codes are not properly documented? So of course that will just introduce bugs if it's not properly documented and it's not properly unit tested as well. So another reason would be time constraints, just pretty straightforward. If you don't have enough time to test, then of course it will just have bugs. Same with the developers. If they don't have enough time to complete the development work and not able to complete, or they not able to achieve higher unit test coverage, then of course you expect for other bugs or issues that will be encountered in the product. Okay. You have a question, Jay? You raise your hand. I don't see your name. Yeah, is it Jan or James? Jeff. Oh yeah, yeah. Yes. Because I only see the initial J. If you have questions. Okay, so just let me know if you have a question. Moving on, so SDLC stages where bug reports are created. Again, in the development phase, bugs are reported mostly by the developers. And during the alpha testing, QA department finds most of the bugs during this stage. And then the maintenance phase, after software has been released, there are still reported bugs after the software released are still being reported by employees and the end users. Okay. So what is the main components of a bug report? So I've been mentioning about bugs, logging of bugs, bug reports. So this is what an example of a bug report is. So again, this is 1-to-1. The ratio is 1-to-1. If you have one issue, then that is one bug. If you have 10 issues, then that is 10 bugs. So ideally, a good practice is you do not combine all, for example, 10 issues in one bug report. So you need to have 1-to-1 ratio, like one issue, one bug report. So this is the components of a bug report. You can, and also a disclaimer or just a note, you can create bug reports in Excel sheet or Google Sheet. So you can just have one column for each component. So you have a bug title, component, bug ID, status, and so on and so forth. And also, however, you can also use a bug management tool such as JIRA. So you can log the bugs there. So instead of creating and maintaining the bugs in Excel sheet or Google Sheet, you can also use JIRA for that. However, for this class, for this lesson, we're not going to have a demo of how to log bugs in JIRA. It will be covered on another lesson as well. Okay, so the main component, the first one is the bug title. So the bug title needs just to be concise and clear and short, but descriptive of what the error is. So in this example, an attempt to access website results in 404. So usually, what did you do and what was the result? So the bug title is you attempted to access a website. For example, you go into www.xyz.com and you got a 404 error. So that's the bug title. So the bug ID, so this is the identifier of the bug. So we usually identify the bug by the ID, not by the title, because sometimes title are, not a good identifier because it's words and it's hard to memorize. Instead of the bug ID, you can just assign a bug ID for that. It depends which tool you are using. If you are manually maintaining the bug report, then you can just assign the bug ID. You can start with 1, then auto incremented, like the next one would be 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. However, if you're using a tool such as JIRA or ALM or other test management tool, bug ID is auto-generated and auto-incremented. So you don't need to worry about the bug ID. It's already there. You don't need to enter the bug ID. Status, new. I will explain this on the next slide, the bug life cycle. So let's just park this for now. Priority. So priority, I have mentioned priority earlier, and I think someone mentioned about P3 and P4. So the priority can be P0, which is the highest, P1, P2, P3, P4. So P0 can be a blocker or can also be known as a blocker. So it depends on the tool that you are using. It can be P0 or high. In JIRA, it's called high, but P0, it's considered as blocker. So you set the priority. It's based from your understanding. It's based from your assessment of the bug. If it's a priority P0, P0 is considered a blocker, meaning you're not able to do anything. You're completely blocked. You're blocked with specific functionality, or you're not able to do something. So for in this example, you are not able to access a site. So that is considered as P0. P1 could be a blocking functionality, but there's a workaround. So you can do other functionalities instead of that functionality. Um, that's also possible. For P2, P3, or P4, it's just probably content issues like misspelled words, grammar, UI issues like this should be larger, this should be bigger, this should be bolder, this should be smaller. So those are examples of P2, P3, P4. It's totally up to you if what priority you wanted to set. Again, that's why I mentioned earlier that sometimes P2 down or P2 bugs, P3, P4 are not high priority and they're not fixed by the developers. And you can provide your sign off um, without that uh, those bugs being fixed. Yeah, missed a line. That is correct. As is shown, that is also considered as P3 or P2 or P1 or P2 or P3. So other examples of P0 like you're unable to upload, you're unable to delete, anything that is unable you to do that is blocking you, then that's a P0. Or you're not able to access, or you're getting an incorrect calculation. For example, for the checkout, your orders total is not correct, then that's a P0 because that's a critical bug. You cannot, you know, you cannot go to the next page without having the correct computation of your order. So that is priority. We have a question from Shaila. Do we need to mention severity in the bug report? Sometimes, but priority is the main one that we report. So, guys, the difference between priority and severity, priority is the urgency of the bug. Okay, so if P0, it means it's high urgency, it needs to be fixed ASAP. Severity is the impact of the bug. For example, severity can be high, low, or medium, or they can also be P0, P1, P2. So high severity means impacts. So meaning if you're unable to access the site, then severity there is high because it impacts all the functionalities. Meaning it impacts all. You cannot do anything because you're unable to log in. Another severity would be low. So same as with the content, it can be a low severity. So yeah, so severity is not, to be honest, not used much anymore. They solely based on the priority. So assigned to is the developer who's going to work with this bug. Reported by is who reported the bug. So if you are maintaining a bug report in an Excel sheet, then you just write your name or whoever reported that bug. If it's in JIRA or if it's a bug tool, then you don't need to um, enter the reported by. It's usually auto populated by whoever is logged in. Then step to reproduce, you just need to write in the steps on how you will get to that bug. So navigate to homepage, click this, click that. So for example, if your bug is on the checkouts page, then you need to write down the steps from login to adding a product to clicking checkout until you go to the orders page. Expected result is usually the expected result from the requirements. So you just copy and paste. If you're testing a test case and you encounter the bug, then just copy and paste the expected result. Actual result is the actual result you have encountered. So for this example, you have encountered that 404 message. And lastly, environment details. So what the environment you are testing for in this example, it's OS is Windows, and you are testing a web application and a browser, Chrome, and then the version number. Why environment details is important? Just to isolate the issues. Some bugs are or some issues in while testing is isolated to certain cases like OS or um, versions, especially for web application. We have different browsers and some browsers don't support this functionality. So that's why you need to be detailed in the environment where you are testing just to make sure that you isolate the cases. Because you might encounter this in Chrome version. You didn't enter the Chrome version in the bug report, and the developer started looking at the bug and they retest or they reproduce that in Mozilla or Firefox, and that happens to work in for Mozilla Firefox, then they'll just reject the bug, meaning that it's an invalid bug. So that's why you need to make sure that you have entered the correct version of the bug, or sorry, the correct version of the environment. So another good to have component is screenshots. If you have screenshots, then you can also add it in the bug report. You can also attach um, videos like screencast of how you encounter the bug. You can also add files if you're testing uploads. You can add the files that you're trying to upload, XML files, database, queries. So all those attachments, you can add that as well. So that's the main components of a bug report. Let's just go back to the questions. From Marco, let's say that you have this bug on Windows 10, and before you report the bug, should you go and check on iOS, for example, or another browser, write everything in one report? Yeah, you can also add that in the bug report. So in the description, you can also add that you have text. You have checked this in iOS and it worked, and then it's only encountered in iOS, in Windows 10. So you can add that information in the bug as well. Yuri, when color in logo not correct or need, when it's just aesthetics or UI related, most of the time we can just put it as P2. The highest can be P2. Anything related to the UI, like misaligned colors, text, fonts, those kinds of bugs, it can be P2. The highest can be P2. From James, is there a certain time frame assigned to the tester? Like the bug supposed to be completed in an hour or two at the end of the day? So there's no SLAs or service level agreement for the bugs. As long as the developers have fixed that, then you can retest that. However, there are testing metrics. There are metrics that has the bug resolution, meaning how long it took for a developer from logging up from QA logging a bug for them to fix. So we have those metrics just to make sure that the developers are efficient in resolution or fixes of the bug. There's also one test metrics, bug fix or bug resolution to closed. So that metrics checks how fast we retest and close bugs. So after the bugs have been closed. So again, there are no SLAs for these bugs, but we have metrics just to see how efficient are developers and testers in these bugs, bug fixes and bug closing or retests. May priority be from Noruna? May priority be is P0 and severity be low? Yes. One example is one functionality is you are unable to do one functionality. So that's an urgent fix, but the severity is low because it doesn't have much impact because it's just one functionality. For example, you're unable to view a product. You're getting an error message. So that could be a P0 because it's critical, meaning it needs to be fixed ASAP because it's viewing, it's a high functionality. However, the severity can be low because the issue is just for the viewing. So that's the correlation between the priority and severity. That bug is considered as P0. It needs to be fixed ASAP because it's blocking the view functionality. However, the severity is low because it's just blocking one functionality. It's just blocking the view. You're still able to do other functionalities. So that's the relationship between priority and severity. Once we find the bug in one environment, do we then test other possible environments and submit separate reports for any additional occurrences that we find? Yeah. So you can use the bug title. So you can have here like which browser you test, Chrome. So that's one bug, and another bug for Firefox, then another bug for Mozilla. So at least you do not write or create duplicate bugs, so you can just add the browser you are testing in the bug title, and you can add that in the steps to reproduce, like open Mozilla or the browser, um, open the browser, then navigate to the home page, and so on and so forth, so that you can log a bug first for different um, OS or browser version. Just make sure that you don't log a duplicate bug reports. So you can do that by adding the browser version in the bug title or in the steps to reproduce. From Ibrahim, as manual QA, all we have to do is to see errors in real time in which AC like end users. Yep. So one responsibility is to see the to log bugs, errors in real time. Yep. The highest in UI can be P2 unless it's on a monetization page, and then it should be P0. Correct? Yep. Ideally, content or UI can be P2 highest, but for example, if it's displaying incorrectly, like yeah, for example, in the trading site, depending on the application, then that could be a P0 also. But if it's just like colors or misaligned or anything related to displaying, then that could be a P2. Christopher Harrison, remind me of what an SLA is. SLA is service level agreement. So that is the agreed timeline that this needs to be completed or fixed. So in bug reports, we don't have that SLAs, meaning it's not required for the developers to fix it. Like for P0, oh, actually, I take it back. Depending on the team, depending on the organization, there are SLAs. For example, if the bug is P0, then it needs to be fixed in 1 day. For P1 in 2 days, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I take it back that there's no SLAs for for bug fixes. So there is an SLA. An SLA is agreed upon um, the team and the organization, how long they need to fix the bugs according to the priority, and also how long the bugs needs to be retested depending on the priority as well. Yes, misinformation and wrong logo is also a P2. Ibrahim, we are not required to memorize error codes. Yes, we also required to test in various environments. Okay, guys, it's already 1 minute past 10:30 EST, so we have one more slide to cover. So this is the bug life cycle. So remember, I have a status in the bug component, and bug life cycle is just a life cycle of the bug. So it's a journey of a defect from its identification, meaning it's new, until it's closed or its closure. The life cycle varies from organization to organization, is governed by the software testing process and tracking tools being used. So again, the life cycle you see here is just the basic one. And it varies from organization to organization based from experience. This is the simplest form of the bug life cycle. Depending on the tool or the environment, there's other status or other steps like yeah. But for this lesson, let's just discuss the simple life cycle of the bug. So for example, for the first one is new. So the bug is reported. So you log a bug report that's new. You set the status to new. It's fresh. It's just logged in. You just log the bug report now. Then the status will be new. Then it will be assigned to a developer. So sometimes the dev lead or the dev manager assign the bug to whoever the developer who worked on that requirement or that functionality. Then the status would be assigned, meaning a developer is already looking at that bug. So you change the status to assigned, or the tool will change the status into assigned once you assigned it to a developer. So in the back end or the background, the developer will fix that bug. They will check your bug report and try to recreate that. And if they find the root cause for that bug, it's a code error, then they will update the bug. They will fix the bug. Once that is fixed, then it will go back to you. So you will see in the bug report is already fixed. The developer will change the status to fixed. Then it will be retested by you. That's what I meant. That's what I meant was before. What I meant before was there's extra steps between assigned and resolved, like I mentioned, fixed and retest. So fixed meaning the bug has been fixed, and then it's the time that you retest. So once you retest and it's passed, um, okay, let me take it back. So retest. So retest, there's three possible outcome that it's resolved. The first outcome would be you retest the bug. It passed the retest, meaning the bug is fixed. Then you can change it to resolved. And then there's another one outcome wherein it failed. So you retest the bug and it failed. For some reason, the developers didn't fix the bug. Then you need to reopen that bug and assign it back to the developer so they can check and see how what went wrong, why the bug is back to them, why the bug is not yet closed. So it will um, goes back to assigned state, and it will be resolved again, and you will retest it and see if it's failed or if it's passed. Then if it's passed, then you can just close the bug, meaning you already retested that bug and it retested passed. Another outcome would be the bug reoccurred. For some reason, the bug was already fixed today and you retested that bug today and it's closed, meaning you retested it and it passed. And then next week or for example, tomorrow and the next week, you encountered the bug again. So you don't need if the bug reoccurred and it happened again, then you don't need to log a new bug for that. You just go back to that specific bug that was already closed and similar to the bug that you have encountered. You just click reopen or you reopen that bug. You don't need to log a new bug because it's going to be a duplicate. Then once you have reopened that bug, then it will be assigned to a developer and the developer will check that and it will be fixed and it will be retested again by you. And whether it's closed and whether it's passed, then you close that. And if it's not, then you assign it back to the developer. So that is the bug life cycle from new to reopened. Okay, guys. From Yuri, how many times MQA or manual QA can reopen test? You mean bugs? There's no standard rule for how many times. As long as the bug reoccurs, then you can reopen that bug. But again, there are testing metrics for how many times a bug has been reopened, how many times the bug has been closed. So that's checking the efficiency of how the developers fix the bugs. Okay. What is one way the bug can reoccur after being fixed? It might be impacted by other fix. If you have hundreds of bugs in the login, for example, in the checkouts page, there is a potential case wherein that one bug might affect another bug. So you already fixed that bug, and then for some reason it gets that code is updated again. So it might introduce another bug, or it might reoccur the same bug again. So if you are working in as a tester, expect for bugs being affected by other bugs and reoccurring of bugs, because there are so many times that the codes are changed and updated multiple times. So we're just human. We are human. We're not just human. We are human, and we're prone for mistakes. And yeah, that might introduce, or it might reoccur, bugs that were fixed previously. From Sheila, or log a new bug with different release cycle. Yeah, yes, you can reopen bugs and create a bug with a different release cycle as well. Um, so yeah, so for this slide, there is no bug-free software. So computer and software that application runs on will continue to change even while the code is frozen, meaning we are not changing the codes. So it will just, depending on the patches, the software upgrades and fixes, devices and drivers as well. So aside from that, hardware and OS are also main contributor of bugs in production. That's why there is no bug-free software. So even though that we have completed the production deployment, we're on the maintenance phase and we're not changing the codes anymore. Expect for bugs that is um, impacted by the hardware and the OS or the software patches and fixes. So that's just the main takeaway for this slide. And lastly, JIRA. So again, JIRA 19402. JIRA for this lesson is just an overview. Um, we are not going to do a demo of the JIRA. It will be covered in the next lessons, I think 6 or 7, wherein you are going to test a web or a mobile application and you will try to log a bug in JIRA. So JIRA software is an application or a project management tool that supports methodology, mostly Agile, Scrum, Kanban, and others. So Agile boards to reports. JIRA helps plan, track, and manage all software development projects from a single tool. So we use JIRA for logging of bugs. So you can see here when you click issues, when you click that issues, then that's the time you will log a bug. So it has the same components as what was displayed earlier, the main components of a bug. Instead of maintaining it in an Excel sheet, then you can create that through JIRA as well. Okay, guys. So JIRA is just a project management tool. So you can see here all the requirements and all the bugs for the requirements. Okay, guys. Okay, guys, that's the last slide. Sorry again if we are extending for 9 minutes. Yeah, sorry about that, Lydia. Yeah, next time let's just stick to 2 hours. I know you have life after this. Yeah, I was just trying to answer all the questions. That's why we were extending for 10 minutes, but I'll take note of that next time. Okay, yeah, any other question? That's the end of the slide for the lesson. If you have other questions, you can stay in. We have a question from what's this? From Abel. I have a question. Okay. Oh, Slack channel link. I'll send you the support email. From Blues, during the SDLC process in the maintenance cycle, does it relate to QA regression testing? So regression testing is part of the alpha testing, meaning we do regression in QA or staging environment. So we don't do regression during the maintenance phase or maintenance cycle, because maintenance cycle meaning it's already, the application is stable enough. So why do we need to do regression testing? So we do regression testing in the QA environment or maintenance, or sorry, in the staging environment. Okay, I think that was the last question. Thank you very much again, guys. Um, there was, yeah, feel free to drop. Let me just send us the email to the support team. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Abel, you can check with this. Good night, Jan. Good night, everyone. Thank you again.